He killed in the dark. He killed couples parked in quiet places, alone on roads where nobody would hear anything. He killed a cab driver on a city street. He killed in Northern California in the late 1960s, and he did it with a confidence and a coldness that suggested he had done this before and planned to do it again. But the killing was only part of it. What made the Zodiac Killer different from almost every other murderer in American criminal history was what he did after. He wrote letters. He wrote to newspapers. He wrote to police. He wrote in code. He taunted investigators. He gave himself a name. He claimed victim counts that far exceeded what could be confirmed. He threatened to kill school children. He sent pieces of his victims' clothing as proof of what he had done. And then, at some point in the early 1970s, he simply stopped. No final crime, no final letter, no explanation, no arrest, no confession, no body found that definitively closed the file. The Zodiac Killer sent his last confirmed letter in 1974 and was never heard from again. More than 50 years later, his identity has never been officially confirmed. The ciphers he sent, some of them, were not decoded for decades. One of them, sitting in a case file for over 50 years, was finally cracked in 2020 by a team of amateur codebreakers working from their homes. What it said when they finally broke it open will stay with you. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer. And if you think you'd know this case, I promise you there are details in what follows that will make you see it differently. To understand the Zodiac, you need to understand the time and the place. Northern California in the late 1960s was a world in transition. San Francisco had been the epicenter of the Summer of Love in 1967. The counterculture was everywhere. The Manson family was operating in Southern California. The world felt like it was shifting beneath people's feet in ways that were exciting to some and deeply unsettling to others. It was also a time before the language of serial killers existed in the public consciousness the way it does now. The FBI's behavioral science unit was in its infancy. The concept of a predatory killer who chose victims at random, who killed for the pleasure of it, rather than for money or passion or revenge, was not something most people had a framework to understand. The Zodiac gave them one, and he seemed to enjoy doing it. The first attack attributed to the Zodiac Killer took place on the night of December 20th, 1968, on a remote road called Lake Herman Road near Benicia, California. David Faraday was 17 years old. Betty Lou Jensen was 16. They were on their first date. They had parked on Lake Herman Road, a spot that local young people used regularly. A car pulled up alongside them. A man got out with a gun. David Faraday was shot once in the head at close range while still in the car. Betty Lou Jensen ran. She was shot 5 times in the back before she had made it 30 feet from the vehicle. They were found by a passing motorist. David died at the hospital. Betty Lou was already gone. There were no witnesses, no clear description of the attacker, no shell casings that could be traced. The killer had come out of the dark and gone back into it, leaving behind 2 teenagers on a cold December road and the beginning of something that would terrorize Northern California for years. 7 months later, on July 4th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again. Darlene Ferrin was 22 years old. Michael Mageau was 19. They were parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California, just after midnight. A car pulled up, parked nearby, left, came back. A man approached their car with a flashlight and a gun. He shot both of them multiple times at close range and walked back to his car. Michael Mageau survived. Barely. He had been shot in the face, neck, and chest. He survived and later provided a description of the attacker. A white male, heavy-set, around 5 feet 8 inches tall, with short, curly brown hair. He appeared to be in his late 20s or early 30s. Darlene Ferrin did not survive. About an hour after the shooting, a man called the Vallejo Police Department. He spoke calmly. He said he wanted to report a double murder. He gave the location. He described the weapon he had used. And then, before hanging up, he said something that made the hair stand up on the arm of every officer who heard the tape. He told them he had also killed the 2 kids last December. Lake Herman Road, David Faraday, and Betty Lou Jensen. He was claiming them. He was connecting the crimes deliberately. He was announcing himself. 3 weeks after the Vallejo shooting, 3 letters arrived simultaneously at 3 Northern California newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contained details of both shootings that had not been made public, details that only the killer could have known. Each letter also contained 1/3 of a 408-symbol cipher. The writer demanded that the newspapers print the ciphers on their front pages, or he would go on a killing rampage, targeting a bus full of children as his next victims. The letters were signed with a symbol, a circle with a cross through it, a crosshairs symbol. He called himself the Zodiac. The newspapers printed the ciphers. Cryptographers, amateur and professional, immediately began working on the code. Within a week, a high school teacher named Donald Harden and his wife Betty had cracked it. What it said was chilling. The cipher read, in part, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It's even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all the I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." He was not looking for help. He was not leaving clues accidentally. He was performing. On September 27th, 1969, the Zodiac attacked again, this time in broad daylight. Brian Hartnell was 20 years old. Cecilia Shepard was 22. They were picnicking on the shore of Lake Berryessa in Napa County when a man approached them. He was wearing a hood, a black hood with a bib that hung over his chest. On the bib was a symbol stitched in white, the crosshairs symbol, the Zodiac symbol. He tied Brian and Cecilia with pre-cut lengths of clothesline he had brought with him. He told them he was an escaped convict who needed their car and their money. He seemed calm, almost conversational. And then he produced a knife and stabbed them both, repeatedly. Brian Hartnell survived, despite being stabbed 6 times in the back. Cecilia Shepard was stabbed 10 times and died 2 days later in the hospital. Before leaving, the Zodiac did something that no killer in a hurry does. He walked to Brian Hartnell's car. He took out a felt tip pen, and on the car door he wrote the dates of his previous attacks: Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, and that day's date, September 27th. He drew his crosshairs symbol above the dates. He was keeping score. He was signing his work. That night, a man called the Napa County Sheriff's Department from a payphone to report the attack. The payphone was located near the Napa car wash. Investigators later found a partial palm print on the phone. It was never matched to any identified individual. 2 weeks later, on the night of October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac killed for what would be the last confirmed time. Paul Stein was a 29-year-old cab driver working in San Francisco. He picked up a fare in the Union Square area of the city. The passenger directed him to the Presidio Heights neighborhood. At the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets, the passenger shot Paul Stein once in the head with a handgun. He then took Paul's wallet and his car keys. He tore a section of Paul's shirt. 3 teenagers in a house across the street witnessed the attack. They called the police. In one of the most significant failures of this entire investigation, the police dispatch initially broadcast the description of the suspect as a black male. The description from the witnesses was of a white male. The error was corrected, but not before 2 officers encountered a heavyset white man in the area who told them he had just seen the cab driver and the attacker and pointed them in a direction away from himself. Those officers let him go. Days later, the Zodiac sent another letter to the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside the envelope was the torn piece of Paul Stein's shirt, proof that he had been there. He mocked the police for letting him walk away. He described the encounter with the 2 officers in detail. He told them they had come within 10 feet of catching him. He seemed delighted by it. The letters continued after the killings slowed. Over the following years, the Zodiac sent multiple communications to newspapers and police. He claimed his victim count was climbing, eventually claiming 37 kills, though investigators could only confirm 5 with certainty and link a handful of others with reasonable confidence. He sent a letter with a piece of a cipher he said contained his name. That partial cipher has never been definitively solved. He sent a letter to attorney Melvin Belly on television during a live broadcast, addressing him personally and asking for help. He sent a greeting card to the San Francisco Chronicle on Halloween 1970 with a poem that referenced a well-known children's rhyme and warned that he had a little list of names he intended to work through. And then in 1974, he sent his last confirmed letter. It was a response to a film review. He complained about the movie The Exorcist and signed it with his symbol and account of his claimed victims. After that, nothing. The investigation into the Zodiac Killer produced one of the most seriously considered suspects in the history of unsolved crime, Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen was a former schoolteacher who lived in Vallejo, California. He had a history of violent behavior and had been convicted of child molestation. He had been investigated by police as early as 1971 when a friend reported that Allen had spoken about wanting to hunt humans before the killings began. The circumstantial case against Allen was extraordinary. He wore a Zodiac brand watch with the crosshair symbol on its face. He owned the same brand of Wingwalker shoes whose prints were found at the Lake Berryessa crime scene. He had been at Salt Point State Park on the day of the Lake Berryessa attack, according to his own account, which placed him in the general area. He had told his friend before the murders that he wanted to be called Zodiac and that he liked the idea of collecting slaves for the afterlife. But the physical evidence never conclusively connected him. His handwriting did not match the Zodiac letters. His DNA did not match DNA recovered from stamps and envelopes the Zodiac had licked. His fingerprints did not match the partial print from the Napa payphone. Arthur Leigh Allen died in 1992 of a heart attack. He was never charged. He denied being the Zodiac until his death. Whether he was telling the truth is a question that his death made permanently unanswerable. In November of 2020, a team of codebreakers called the 340 Cipher team, working from home during the pandemic lockdown, cracked the 340 cipher. The cipher had been sent by the Zodiac in November 1969 and had defeated cryptographers for 51 years. When they broke it open, the message read, in part, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me." He had been writing about his afterlife slaves again, still performing, still taunting. Even in a code he expected would take months to crack, he was putting on a show. The FBI officially confirmed the solution in December 2020. The remaining cipher, the one he claimed contains his name, has not been definitively solved. The Zodiac Killer case remains officially open with multiple law enforcement agencies in Northern California. In 2021, a group of cold case investigators called the Casebreakers publicly named a man called Gary Francis Post as their primary suspect. They presented evidence they believed connected Post to the crimes. The FBI reviewed their findings and did not publicly confirm Post as a suspect. Post died in 2018. The DNA recovered from the envelopes the Zodiac licked remains the best hope of a definitive identification. Investigative genetic genealogy has been applied to the profile. As of today, no confirmed match has been publicly announced. The 5 confirmed victims of the Zodiac Killer were David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stein. They were real people. They were young. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they encountered something that should not exist in the world, but does. A person who killed for pleasure and then wrote about how much he enjoyed it. Somewhere in Northern California, in the late 1960s and early 1970s, a man wrote letters to newspapers about the people he was killing and the slaves he was collecting for his afterlife and signed them with a crosshair symbol and called himself the Zodiac. And then he stopped and went quiet, and either died of old age, never having been caught, or is still out there somewhere, an elderly man in his 80s or 90s, the only person alive who knows the full answer to the question that has haunted this case for more than 50 years. Who was the Zodiac? Leave your theories in the comments. Do you think Arthur Leigh Allen was the Zodiac? Do you think the remaining cipher actually contains his name? Do you think genetic genealogy will finally crack this case the way it cracked the Golden State Killer? This community has sharp minds, and I want to know what you think. If you are new here, subscribe to the Unsolved Vault. Hit the bell. We are here every Tuesday and Friday with the cases that refuse to be forgotten.